The year is 1932, and the country is much different than we know it to be now, because it was once on the verge of collapsing on itself entirely. There was one man who was able to put an end to all the trouble and strife that America was dragged into, for he possessed the key to the preservation of America. This is the story of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. America thrives on stability and the welfare of the general economy. So what happens if that balance is tipped? One man is about to find that out for himself. We must go back to the very beginning of Roosevelt's election, when Americans were desperately waiting for an answer to their troubles.
Sir, here are the reports you requested.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Secretary. Let's take a look here. Oh no. This is worse than I thought. The country is going completely bankrupt. And the stock market's on the verge of collapse once again.
It's even worse than that, sir. The banks have nothing left in the reserves to pay off their debts.
Don't worry, we can fix it up. All this country needs is a new deal. A new deal? I kinda like that.
Being the man that he is, our president went right to work. He saw that the nation was having trouble, and with the best of his ability, he set about creating a plan of action that would put an end to all this trouble and strife.
There were just two alternatives to this economic condition. The first was to allow the foreclosures to continue, credit to be withheld, and money to go into hiding, and thus forcing liquidation and bankruptcy of banks, railroads, insurance companies, and recapitalization of all business and of all property on a lower level. The alternative meant a continuation of what was loosely called deflation, the net result of which would have been extraordinarily hardship on all property owners and, incidentally, extraordinarily hardships on all persons working for wages through an increase in unemployment and a further reduction of the wage scale.
Excuse me, sir. I was wondering how the situation was coming.
Oh, I'm just writing down my plan for a new deal. Basically, these New Deal programs that I'm introducing mandate that the government take direct action in our economy so we can save our most quintessential and traditional American value of free enterprise. There's a storm facing our country today, Mr. Secretary, and we gotta do something about it.
But Mr. President, what kind of measures are you proposing that could reinvigorate this economy and instill in these struggling people the spirit of individualism and free enterprise?
Well, Mr. Secretary, as you can see, because of the Great Depression, the American people are losing faith in liberty and the traditional American values, and especially capitalism. It is us, the government, that needs to be the vanguard of that tradition.
Mr. President, Mr. President!
Yes.
Tell us about the Civilian Conservation Corps.
Oh, the Civilian Conservation Corps. It's going to put 2.5 million unmarried men to work, and it's going to teach Americans to live independently and to increase their self-esteem. Also, in accordance to the Civilian Conservation Corps, the Civil Works Administration will also give the unemployed jobs, such as building or repairing roads and the establishment of new parks.
It is easy to see that the result of this course will not only have economic effects of a very serious nature, but social results that might bring incalculable harm.
Roosevelt knew from the start that in order for this New Deal to work, he had to get response from all the people of the United States. He had to account for every alternative of the economic condition that we were all in. And to do this, he proposed that each and every business had to be capitalized for the benefit of all who profited from it.
It was clear that mere appeals from Washington for confidence and the mere lending of mere money to shaky institutions could not stop this downward course. A prompt program applied as quickly as possible seemed to me not only justified but imperative. to our national security. The Congress, and when I say Congress, I mean the members of both parties, fully understood this and gave me generous and intelligent support.
Roosevelt's previous plan had worked. Government inspectors found that most banks were healthy, and 2/3 were allowed to open soon after. After their reopening, deposits had exceeded withdrawals. The nation was one step towards recovery.
The National Labor Relations Act, well, it legalizes the practice of unions, and it will close shops that don't allow union workers, and I will establish the National Labor Relations Board to enforce these new provisions.
Will this allow for decreased unemployment in our nation?
Yes.
We are clearly enhancing the value of our natural resources. And second, we are relieving an appreciable amount of actual distress. This great group of men have entered upon their great work on a purely voluntary basis. No military training is involved, and we are conserving not only our natural resources, but our human resources. Second, I have requested the Congress and have secured action upon a proposal to put the great properties owned by our government at Muscle Shoals to work after long years of wasteful inaction. And with this broad plan for the improvement of a vast area in the Tennessee Valley, it will add to the comfort and happiness of hundreds of thousands of people, and the incident benefits will reach the entire nation. The next Congress is about to pass legislation that will greatly ease the mortgage distress among the farmers and the homeowners of the nation by providing for easing of the burden of debt now bearing so heavily upon millions of our people.
The American public wants to know, what is the Social Security Act?
Oh, the Social Security Act, it provides a system for old age pensions, workers, for survivor benefits, and for victims of industrial accidents. It also provides pensions for the unemployed.
At long last, we see that Roosevelt's work was almost complete. He had spread his ideals across the land, and at last he was ready to share his final opinions and plan of action with the people who so desperately needed it. With only a few minor hiccups, his plan was a defining success.
Throughout the Depression, you have been patient. You have granted us wide powers. You have encouraged us with a widespread of approval of our proposals. Every ounce of strength and every resource at our command we have devoted to the end of justifying your confidence. We are encouraged to believe that a wise and sensible beginning has been made. In the present spirit of mutual confidence and mutual encouragement, we go forward.
Finally, the New Deal is complete. Here, hold this, Mr.
Yes,
Secretary.
All right.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Frankly, Mr. President, are you certain that this deal will work for America?
Mr. Secretary, the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Let's go. To the American people.
Throughout his years, Roosevelt would continue his influential ways and inspire America to take action once again. Here we see him in December of 1941, where he would deliver his infamous speech, which would officially bring the United States into World War II after the attack on Pearl Harbor from Japan.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy. The United States of America was suddenly and deliberately attacked by naval and air forces of the Empire of Japan. It will be recorded that the distance of Hawaii from Japan makes it obvious that the attack was deliberately planned many days or even weeks ago. The Japanese government has deliberately sought to deceive the United States by false statements and expressions of hope for continued peace. The facts yesterday and today speak for themselves. The people of the United States have already formed their opinions and will understand the implications to the very life and safety of our nation. As Commander-in-Chief of the Army and the Navy, I have directed that all measures be taken for our defense, that always will our whole nation remember the character of the onslaught against us. No matter how long it may take us to overcome this premeditated invasion, the American people in their righteous might will win through to absolute victory. Hostilities exist. There is no blinking at the fact that our people, our territory, and our interests are in grave danger. With our confidence in our armed forces, with the unbounding determination, we will gain the inevitable triumph, so help us God. Since the unprovoked and dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th, 1941, a state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
President Franklin Delano Roosevelt dies on April 12, 1945. He would leave the country in hands of Vice President Truman, who would have to deal with all the problems of the Second World War. Truman would have great expectations brought on him, which sadly he could not fulfill. Roosevelt would live on in history as the president who brought our country out of the Great Depression and into a new era of change.